Welcome into week 2 of Jacket Sports Weekly, where we cover everything Waynesburg sports. Today it's week 2 of the 2025 fall semester, and by all sports, I mean all sports. Men and women's cross country all the way down to football. So stay tuned.
Welcome to Jacket Sports Weekly, Waynesburg University's weekly sports show where we cover the best of the best in athletics. Our analysts discuss a multitude of highlight plays such as touchdown passes.
And Barber's going to throw again, one-on-one. Does he got it in him? That's a catch! Tyler Richmond with flags thrown everywhere makes the catch! Touchdown, Waynesburg!
And ones.
This was low, Waynesburg's going to get it! Suggs is going to pull away here, go for the layup, and it's going to fall in and one! PJ Suggs!
And home runs.
Higgins drives one to left field. The left fielder running back, and that ball is out of here. Grace Higgins.
Join us every Wednesday to see what's new in Waynesburg University athletics.
As I mentioned, all fall sports Waynesburg, and today next to me I have Benicio DeFalco. I'm Dean Shazer. Kicking it off with running. Men's cross country, women's cross country. A few things we're going to dive into. So Benicio, how you doing? How's the day? You ready to cover some sports? Yeah. All right. Waynesburg University, welcome in. So, talking a little bit about men's cross country, I know it's hard to improve on speed. It's hard to improve your speed, especially in the course of one season. What can the men's cross country team do to maybe take that next step into placing better? Because they had 4 guys in the 30s and 40s, and then 2 in the 50s, finishing in the 50s with times above 30 minutes.
Yeah. Overall, they placed 6th just this past Saturday. In the 8K, they were going against PAC opponents, but also Division II opponents, along with NIA opponents as well. So they were going against tougher competition. I'd like to see Jack Hood start to improve, as he's only been just a minute off the top runner in Kyle Casella in the past 2 weeks, although Jack Hood's only a freshman. So exactly. I'd like to see him start to creep up on Casella, start to bring him competition. Those two will make each other better. Casella's a junior, so he'll still have a senior year to improve. But if I'm looking at this team, I'm not calling out Jack Hood because I think he's done great.
Right.
It's just how much can you improve? As I mentioned, he's only a minute behind Casella as that number 1 spot at Waynesburg at the moment. Is he going to be able to take that spot from him?
Putting that in perspective, Casella finished at 34th, just finishing under 31 minutes at 30:59, and freshman Jack Hood crossed the finish line at 38th, finishing at a time of 31 minutes and 42 seconds. Moving on to women's cross country, we know the name Grace Tanksley. She was she was the most impressive runner for Waynesburg last year. And as you mentioned, Division II teams, NAIA, a lot of letters going on there. Out of Bedford, Indiana, Waynesburg's top finisher, 23rd at 25 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it wasn't the best performance in the world, but Erin Beville followed her in 24th in 25 minutes, 15 seconds. The rest finished in that 27 to 28 range. Kind of similar to the men's. You got the top 2, and then everyone else kind of follows 2 to 3 minutes off. Now, it's the same situation as I mentioned. Erin Beville and Grace Tanksley. Beville's also very young compared to Jack Hood. They placed a little bit better than the men's, as they placed 5th. This, however, was a 6K, so it was a little bit shorter. These times aren't awful looking at them, and it was out of 42, so they're kind of just in the middle. I'd like to see them improve on that number, especially as the season goes on, but overall, it wasn't the worst performance in the world.
Yeah, out of 82 finishers, there were 5 in the top 60 of the women's side of Waynesburg. Waynesburg, this was the Bethany Invitational last week. They returned to action on Saturday as they travel to Meadville, Pennsylvania for the President's Athletic Conference preview at Allegheny College. Moving over to women's golf. Now, we don't have much news on men's golf. They had a head-to-head matchup against Geneva last week where Waynesburg won their first match head-to-head against Geneva. They won that match. As for the women, they did play. They finished 7th out of 7, however, 3 strokes behind Teal, and Westminster finished at the top, shooting a 359 combined total stroke score. This was last week, and then next week they go to the Golden Eagle Invitational on Saturday. So as for the women's golf, it's Allison Walling. She led Waynesburg with a 97, tied for 14th place in the 42-player field. Golf is a game about limiting your strokes. What is another aspect or quality trait you want to see from this women's team improving throughout the course of the season? Not only in stroke play, but total score as a team.
I don't know how much improvement it's going to be. It's just more of experience. It's a very young team. Just last week, I was talking about 3 different freshmen making their collegiate debuts. Allison Wooling, again on top, but also fellow freshman Avery Davis followed her with a 108 to place 26. So these freshmen, overall the team, like you mentioned, was 7th out of 7 teams, so not a good performance, but not how much are they going to improve. I think it's more of experience. They'll set a foundation in year 1, and definitely, I know it's not track, but kind of similar. You're going to have those PRs. You're going to have, those numbers you want to get. You want to, beat your last match. And I think that's what they're going to be doing right now, is just setting the foundation, especially in the first 3 matches, being only, they're freshmen. This is their first taste at collegiate golf. So I think they're just going to be improving match to match, getting that experience, getting more comfortable. So I think comfortability is the main thing right now, and confidence. I mean, you're going into a season as a freshman already nervous going into it, especially golf, especially an individual sport where all eyes are on you. So I think it's just getting comfortable, building that confidence up. But also golf, I'd like to see them rally together a little bit. You don't see that often in golf. I know it's an individual sport.
Yeah, it's not really a team sport, but it can
It
be.
matters.
Look at the Ryder Cup,
exactly.
for example. Like, you got
these things matter.
country versus a continent, Europe versus America. So golf is competitive, and it can be a team game, and that's something that maybe they could strive for.
Maybe a voice.
Walling also, she did birdie a par 5, and she had 2 pairs of pars. So if you can find a way to limit those double bogeys and bogeys on par 3s, par 3s is what hurts the score, what hurts scores the most. Then they should be sitting pretty. With her only being a freshman, 97 is a solid stand ground in her first match. Waynesburg returns to action on Saturday with a dual match at Carlo at the Youghiogheny Country Club. It took me a while to figure out that pronunciation, but I did it. So moving on over to women's tennis, talking about wins, which they haven't seen often, this one only being their 6th win, not of the year, not of the last 2 years, of the decade. Women's tennis gets their 6th win of the decade, first match of the season. They lost all their doubles sets, but Taylor Stevens, Julia Corey, and Allie Bailey won each of their singles, winning that match early in the season. Now 1-3. We don't see this often from the women's tennis team, but this is another big leap that we can take towards success. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I talked about it last week against Penn State Altoona. They lost 0-7, but it was just the fact that they competed a lot more. And then we mentioned it. Now they got their first win. The confidence is starting to build. They're a young team. Every team that we talked about so far is very young. And it starts with some of the freshmen, even sophomores. Julie Umshares is performed very well. She's in that number 4 single spot, but she's been the most consistent. And then Taylor Stevens picked up her first collegiate victory over the weekend at the number 3 single spots. Honestly, the number 3 and number 4 single spots, they've been able to build a little bit of juice as it's going on. But another name I want to talk about was Celeste Matsuda. I was talking about her last week. She's getting more comfortable as the number 1 single spot. She didn't perform the way you expected her to, but at that number 1 single spot, you're going against the best.
Right.
And so just seeing her improved, and I mean, she was able to cut the sets down and get into tight sets over the weekend. So she was in those positions, and getting in those positions at a young age, being only a freshman at the number 1 single spot, she's only going to improve. And so I think this team, just getting the win alone, has built a confidence and foundation for the rest of the season. I think the sky's the limit for this team.
Now, something I didn't mention about women's golf, it is total cumulative scores once they get into PAC play, so total stroke count matters. So it ultimately is a team game. As for women's tennis and golf, that depth matters. Having your 3 and 4s put up good numbers and competing with other 3 and 4s, if your 3 and 4s are better than your opponent's 3 and 4s, you're most likely going to have an edge on the match. Yeah, their one may be better, but that doesn't matter as long as you have the depth. So, any other thoughts as we move along into our next segment and kick you off here?
Just the last comment, I think you hit on the nail there, was just the depth. The depth wasn't there last season in this tennis team, and having the number 4 and number 5 spot perform the way they have, I think it shows a lot. That it comes down to recruiting. They're starting to build something here for sure.
That win for the women's tennis team was their first in the last 5 against Mount Aloysius. Mount Aloysius falls to 1-3 on the season. Waynesburg is 1-2. They return to action on Thursday. Home President's Athletic Conference matchup against St. Vincent. Coming up next, we have volleyball with Ethan Spozarski. Stay tuned. We're going to change up the tempo a little bit, going from a quad segment to a solo segment. Join with me, as I just mentioned, Ethan Spozarski. Volleyball. Volleyball just lost 3-0 in their last 2 matches. The most points they put up in a set was 23, so they didn't carry over. No extra sets, no extra play. Just talking about volleyball, it's been a rough year, up and downs, not too many ups. In that last game, Roofley, 17 assists, Zadrozny, 10 kills, Zarowski, 7 kills. Those are some of the statistics that stand out. Who are some other players to look out for, or names that I mentioned, and what can you say about these players?
Well, again, I think the biggest thing carrying over that a lot of people may not already know is that there are 14 new women on this team from last year, 12 freshmen, 2 different transfers. I think some names that need to remain in your mind when you're thinking about Waynesburg volleyball is Mallory Boyd. She's on the right side. She's a freshman. Audrey Work, she was a transfer, went to Baldwin High School herself. She's been very effective. She led in kills against Penn State Barron in their Allegheny Gator Invitational they were just a part of. I think, again, if you want to look at some other people who've been here, I think Peyton Coons, who's finally getting some time on the floor now that the upperclassmen last year left, she's been effective defensively. I think Riley Roofley, you always have to keep in mind, she just had 1,000 career assists just right before the Allegheny Gator Invitational, so congratulations to her on that feat. I also think you've got to look at Paige Mortimer and Macy Cree. Those are 2 other women who have been kind of cycling through offensively. And we know Paige Mortimer for her killing ability, being pretty much offensively dominant. Macy Cree's been the primary libero ever since Jordan Stein left. So I think those are just some other different women you're seeing that are consistently being rotated and who have been effective this year. It's just all about the slow starts that are really hurting this team.
And you mentioned slow starts. I was going to ask you areas to improve, and it sounds like that's one of them, probably the biggest one.
Exactly.
If not that, any other areas to improve, if it's a kill game, if it's a setting game, playing as a team, what is it, Ethan?
Defensively, this team looks sound and honestly fine. I know you hear the sweeps and you think that's impossible. Right now, it is the slow starts. Only 29 points through the last 2 matches. I think right now, if Waynesburg gets off to a hotter start against their opponents, like they only scored 12 points against Houghton. They lost 25-12 in that first set. Right. I think if you don't do that, if you put yourself in a better position to start, you're not having to climb back up and build, because come the second and third set, this team's competing. Like you saw it against Houghton. They only lost 25-22, 25-23. They're competing. It's not that this team doesn't know what they're doing. It's just with all the new pieces and a slow start, it's affecting this team. I have all the faith, though, in Hope Johnston, though, as a head coach. I think she's a player's coach. She clearly works well with this team. She knows what she's doing. She clearly can recruit. She's brought in 14 new players. I think that's a big aspect. I think if they just get off to a hotter start, half the problems go away.
I was going to say volleyball, like basketball, is a game of runs. How important is it for them to manage these runs? And other teams, if they go on 9-0, 10-0 splits compared to Waynesburg, if they get 6 points in a row or 7 points in a row, how important is the game of runs in volleyball?
It's so important because 1 minute you could be on a 6-0 run. Next thing you know, you're down 11-6. It's the tide shifts. There is no momentum. It is back and forth, a constant swaying of motion. I think it really all depends on what you're doing up front in the net. I'll tell you what, Waynesburg's blocks have gotten a lot better from last year. They've already gone up. They're averaging 2 more blocks a match than last year. and that goes with the size that they brought in up front. They brought in tall women to defend on those outsides. Then you push it towards the middle and then go for the kill. It doesn't always have to be aggressive, but this team can easily continue to be better. It's just more about finding who belongs where. And the nice thing is, kind of like with football and a lot of PAC sports, the conference record is what matters most. Overall is more of a tie-breaking thing, and they're about to start conference play tonight against Chatham. Well, we're going to be today, rather. I think right now Waynesburg's put itself in a good spot to get there. They just have to really work out some of these kinks, and they'll be fine. But kind of like women's basketball, they're just like 2 years away from being a legit PAC contender because of these talented young women they're waiting to develop.
That game mentioned, the Chatham game mentioned, will be covered in next week's episode of Jacket Sports Weekly, just so we don't get ahead of ourselves. But you mentioned a player's coach, Hope Johnston. And I know you've been around sports your whole life. You've loved sports your whole life. How important do you think establishing a player's coach relationship is, and how important is that player's coach?
I think it's so unbelievably crucial, because if you don't have a team willing to play for you and ride with you, no matter through the hard times like now, then what's the point? There's no chemistry, if there's no atmosphere, if there's no no energy, then what are you playing for? You know,
right.
Because times like this, you need a player's coach. Now, if you're winning, it makes you feel even better because you're playing for the coach, you're playing for the the coaching staff that you appreciate and care for, that make the game better. I think Hope Johnston's done a fantastic job. I mean, just like any coach, there are ups and downs with it, but she clearly knows what she's doing. She is recruited to the highest level. She's traveling outside the country, working and being a coach and recognized other places too.
Right.
She clearly is the mind that Waynesburg volleyball needs to get in the right direction. And like I alluded to, I think they're just a few steps away, because when you step off an old coach, it resets. You reset. It's not like you can bring a new coach in and immediately always just take what they have and run with it. That's not how it works. You need to rebuild your own foundation. So what Emily Grossman had done got pushed aside when Hope Johnston came in, and now I think she's doing a really good job and she's getting to where she needs to be.
From experience, playing with a coach who cares about your personal life as well as your success on the field is much easier than playing for a coach who only cares about success on the field. Now, to send them off to transition from volleyball to football, it's out of conference right now in volleyball, transitioning into President's Athletic Conference play, a.k.a. PAC play. What are some winnable games down the stretch?
I think, first of all, notably Bethany. Waynesburg has always competed well with Bethany in volleyball. Even when Bethany was its powerhouse self and Waynesburg needed to continue to develop with Emily Grossman, Waynesburg's always competed with Bethany. They lost 3-2 earlier this year, early on in a tournament. Waynesburg can always compete with Bethany. I never put that out of your mind. I think some other notable references is Grove City as well. I mentioned this last episode. Emily Grossman is now the head coach, former Waynesburg volleyball coach. She now coaches Grove City. Waynesburg beat Grove City last year.
Right.
This team last year beat Grove City. They can compete with them again. I think any team positionally in the bottom half, preferably even in bottom middle, Waynesburg can compete with. Waynesburg's not the bottom of the PAC by any stretch. Don't let the record fool you. They're 1-9, but the statistics show a positive trend of this team could, with a few different slower starts, could have 3 or 4 more wins. So I do believe this Waynesburg volleyball team is trending in the right direction, especially now with Hope Johnston.
That was senior night last year, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken,
it was.
Grove City versus Waynesburg, and I remember that because it was a big deal. It was Jordan
Yeah.
Stein's final send-off.
Yeah.
Correct?
No, it was. And they came back and they won in 5 sets, and it was a win that needed to happen, because I know those girls, it felt a lot more special because you get that get back, I guess you could say, but also because it was senior night. You want to go off with the right direction. And playing at home, they were dominant at home last year. So
Jordan Stein, all-time digs leader at Waynesburg University, that is. As we transition from softball to football, we're going to have Brett Gombita join us for the football segment, talking about Waynesburg University as they play Hiram at home on Saturday. Waynesburg University football was defeated by Dickinson 52-19 on Saturday. With me to cover the game is Brett Gombita. We're going to go over not just that game, but the preview for Saturday's game against Hiram, as I mentioned previously. Dickinson scored 4 times in the first half. They only had 4 times to score, and they put up 28 points. That's one of the main focal points we're going to focus on, as well as special teams. To start, Brett, what was the biggest problem on Saturday with Waynesburg?
I'm going to sound like a broken record on this show. They need to start early. You're down 21-0 before you score your first points in the game. The first drive of the game for Waynesburg did look promising, but they ended up turning it over in Dickinson territory. You just need to start early. You can't let the other team put up 21 points before you register your first score of the game. Waynesburg actually outrushed and almost outthrew Dickinson in this game. That's just kind of a funny thing if you look at the box score, but it's because of Dickinson's average starting field position from all those turnovers. So,
talking about special teams coming out of the second half, Dickinson returned a 94-yard kick return touchdown, as well as they had a block punt touchdown. We saw those struggles last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, when John Carroll came to Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. Three muff punts, 1 that they got away, 2 that cost them 4 points on safeties, or was 1 a touchdown? I can't recall. Exactly. Two safeties is what it was. So 4 points, not the end of the world, but it's points that they shouldn't be given. Speaking of the total yards in this past game against Dickinson, Dickinson only put up 382 total yards against Waynesburg's 379. Yeah, they were on par for being the same exact thing. Waynesburg had 1 more first down. But I want to transition from yards into quarterbacks. Which quarterback are we going to start? Is it going to be Luke Hudson or is it going to be Tommy Burke? Burke, 81 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. Hudson, 140 yards and a pick. Who would you go?
I think that these first 2 games should have been where you figured out who your quarterback was moving forward. I'm not sure that it's going to be that way, though. I think we might see this rotation throughout the year. If it were up to me, I would probably start Hudson just to kind of change the pace a little bit. Burke has started the last 2 games, and they've started out slow in the first half. But that doesn't mean you can't work him in later in the game as well.
What are your thoughts on that? On the two quarterbacks?
The
2 quarterbacks. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I know some people say if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Right now, neither of them really has the edge, though, over the other. So I think once you find that one that can give you that spark and has the hot hand, that's who you go with moving forward.
Here's my question. You know what you're getting from Burke. Burke is a 4th-year senior. It's about his 6th opportunity he's been given throughout those 4 years. And I know it sounds funny, but it's because of injuries in his freshman year. He got an opportunity, and then he was benched, and then he started again, benched, then promoted. So Burke's had a roller coaster of a career at Waynesburg University. Why not give Hudson a chance? Give him a full game because you know what you're getting from Tommy Burke. You're getting leadership and you're getting he's veteran. He's a seasoned veteran. He's seasoned, as Coleman likes to say. But you know what you're getting from Burke. Why not give Hudson a chance?
We could see that later in the year for sure. I know Hudson actually.
Why not now? Why not now, though?
Because
if you know what you're getting.
Well, it's only week 3, and this is the first. We're playing Hiram, it's their first game in the PAC. We're not really sure what they bring to the table, but they've never seen either QB before, like some of the other upcoming opponents have in the PAC that have saw Burke last year. So this is something new for Hiram.
Zane Cawley finally getting back on track with just about 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zane Cawley struggled against John Carroll, but that was pretty much the dominance of the defensive line. Are we going to see bigger things than we saw last year from Cawley, or what's his ceiling and floor?
I think you can expect to see around the same number of rushing yards from Cawley this season, and that'll actually put him 2nd all time in Waynesburg rushing yards if he continues that trend. He was bottled up a lot in week 1, as you mentioned. Another guy that was Isaac Trout. It was good to see him perform in last week's game. So hopefully, we just need to see everything click at once. That's something that hasn't happened from this team yet.
Week 1, we saw Gio Cipoletti get his first reception in college. This week, we saw Gio Cipolletti's first touchdown reception. Do you see him moving into a more vital role into the tight end spot? Maybe tight end 2, tight end 3 on a rotational?
I think so. He's seen the field a lot here lately, 2025 so far. I think that we could see him a lot here moving forward, especially with the impact he's had late in games, as well as Mutuali Stewart, running back. He's been great running the ball in the second half of these games. You might say it's garbage time, but that's valuable experience.
Cawley only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. Stewart averaged over 6 per carry when he got those second half reps. Now Hiram defeated Oberlin. They put up 58 points on him last week. Does that scare you? This is a game where we thought Hiram, coming in, hasn't had much success. 0-10 season last year. what do you expect to see from Hiram, and what's Waynesburg going to do to this Hiram team? Where can they take advantage?
Yeah, a 20-17 loss last year. Hiram lost to Oberlin. This year they put 58 up on them in week 2 in what's now a non-conference game since they're in the PAC. We need Waynesburg to start early. We need them to put points up. They can't go into the locker room with a goose egg in the score column. That's what they need to do in this game, whether that be not committing any turnovers. Last game they had 2 turnovers on downs as well as 3 interceptions. Just put points up on the board and take an early lead, and that's how you win games.
If you had to give 2 or 3 key points, and obviously one of them being an early start early, because that first drive is very important in football and like anything else. That first shot in golf, the first goal in soccer, like we've been covering. Soccer's next, but what are 2 or 3 takeaways and 2 or 3 key points to this game for Waynesburg to get that victory?
I'd say special teams has to be more fluent. We saw last week a blocked punt and a kick return touchdown, as well as on offense just sustaining long drives, because they had the long drive going on the opening drive against Dickinson. It ended in an interception. That's a huge point swing right there.
So Waynesburg having a offensive line who has experience in the PAC, most of them being seniors between Brisky, Scruggs, Ansel, and whatnot. Can that offensive line penetrate Hiram's defensive line, and how are they going to do in PAC play? How important is it for this offensive line, this group of older dudes, to stay healthy?
Yeah, they really respect this offensive line around the PAC, and it's super important that they stay healthy, because that is how Cauley has found his success. He's a great back, but he wouldn't be doing the things he's doing without this great offensive line as well. We need to welcome Hiram back to the conference, or just into the conference in general, by putting a statement up on the board this week.
Thank you, Brett, for covering football, what happened and what is going to be throughout this Waynesburg University 2025 football season. Coming on next is Anthony DeFilippo to talk about what happened and what's going to happen between men and women's soccer. Welcoming in Anthony DeFilippo for the soccer segment, both women's and men's. As for women's, it's their hottest start since 2011, starting 6-1. They finished 15-5-1 that year. They lost in the President's Athletic Conference game to get the conference. The men's started 0-2, have won their last 4, but we're going to go in the order that they play their doubleheaders in, so we're going to start with women's soccer. Starting with women's soccer, as I mentioned, best start since 2011. What's been the key to that hot start?
Yeah, they've won games in a lot of different ways, and even if you look at the loss that they had against Pitt Greensburg back on September 10th, they gave up 1 goal in the 73rd minute and outshot Pitt Greensburg the entire game. And then you look at their Baldwin-Wallace win. By the way, first win in program history against Baldwin-Wallace. They were 0-9 before that game, and then the 6-0 win against Carlo 2 days ago on September 15th. So, Dean, the biggest key so far has really been winning those games in different ways, getting contributions from everywhere, and their stars are really stepping up.
So, as you mentioned, only allowing that 1 goal in that Pitt Greensburg game, they've only allowed less than 1/3 of a goal per game.
Yeah.
And they've scored over 5 goals per game. To compare that to that 2011 season, which is going to be a vital talking point for this segment alone, in that year, they averaged about 2.8-ish goals per game, a little under that, and then, well, through their first 7 games, they averaged just over 3, did Waynesburg, but throughout the season, right around 2.8, and allowed over a goal per game in that season. So, hot start, goaltending. Alexis Greenleaf has been amazing prior to yesterday's game against Carlo, where she earned another shutout victory.
She didn't face a shot, by the way.
Yeah, which I was going to get to. Defense. The defense has been all over the place.
Yep.
Big addition in freshman depth at the front, and Alexis Greenleaf having that senior mind in the net. Who are some key players on the offensive side for this Waynesburg women's team?
Well, we talked about it last week when I was up here with Logan, but Jules Moorbacher has been fantastic so far this year. You can't mention offense for Waynesburg soccer or Waynesburg basketball for that matter if you don't mention Jules Moorbacher. She had 2 more goals yesterday, and they really got contributions from everywhere. Amanda Pepe got a goal, Reagan Mittendorf got a goal, then Ryan White and Kaya Huggins scored. Miracle Hershey looked good. So they're getting contributions from everywhere. 40-1 shots on goal in that game against Carlo 2 days ago. I keep saying yesterday because it's really the pre-recording thing that's getting messy with my head. But there were no shots on goal. 4 goalkeepers played 2 days ago for Waynesburg. None of them faced a shot.
Well, the big part of that is the stat. Greenleaf on 20 shots faced had only allowed 2 goals in that stretch, over a 90% save percentage, is Alexis Greenleaf. And for their next game against La Roche for the preview, what do you expect out of that one?
Well, I expect them to come out hard like they have all season so far. You know, if they can win, get the 7-1, extend that best start since 2011, that would give them a lot of momentum, as you can say, for lack of a better word, heading into conference play. And I expect them to perform well in that game, and then next week starting against Westminster. So
the men, they also have La Roche for their next game as we transition from the women's into the men. Best of luck to the women. Stay on your hot streak. Jules Moorbacher, being the prime attacker, is on a tear right now, so stay on that tear. For the men's, they also defeated Carlo 2 days ago on Tuesday in an 8-1 victory, of which we saw contributions from star players to first guys getting their first goals. Break it down for me. 4 wins in a row after starting 0-2 for this men's team.
Well, it was one of the more inconsequential goals of the match, but I do have to shout out J.P. Groves, who scored his first ever collegiate goal. That was really awesome. Aiden Groves' brother. Groves has a leg injury right now, so he's not playing. But yeah, they got contributions from everywhere, and I kind of talked about this with the women's team, but they're winning these games in different ways. The Baldwin-Wallace win that they had on September 13th was a 1-0 win. Sarpong Kwabia scored the only goal of that game, and freshman Devin Patel.
Sure it was Sarpong?
I'm pretty sure it could have been Michael Canoe. That one was definitely Sarpong Kwabia, though. Freshman goalkeeper Devin Patel, who continues to play fantastically. Waynesburg got actually outshot in that game, but won the game 1-0. And then against Carlo, they had contributions from everywhere. It was 2-1 at the half, 6 second-half goals. Really blew that game wide open. Liam Mowbray had 2 goals in the first half.
So his first 2 of the season.
His first 2 of the season. Michael Canoe added a goal and 2 assists. Kwabia did end up having a goal and an assist in that game. Just complete domination, 26-6 shot advantage. I just love the way these 2 soccer teams are playing, and I hope we can continue to have positive segments all semester long.
Right, and another shout-out to a first goal. Dane Jones scored his first collegiate goal yesterday. I went on a mission service trip with him. He's a great guy, great kid. Just happy to see this team be able to play some guys who don't always get the opportunities, come in late in games and still make an impact.
Yeah.
How important is that for culture?
It's extremely important for culture. I mean, you saw in the first half yesterday, it seemed like Waynesburg was maybe playing a little bit too tentative, a little bit too passive.
Right.
But they really came out in that second half. Treg Lunger obviously talked to them in the locker room, said something, 6-0 in the second half. That's so important, getting all of those contributions. I mean, you had guys like Noah Merrill, Dane Jones, guys who may not see the pitch all that often, contributing, even if they weren't scoring goals, of course. Dane had a goal yesterday.
Even Zachary.
Awesome.
Zachary,
I mean,
as a replacement
goal. The one guy I haven't mentioned on the men's soccer side is Zachary Johnson, and he didn't show up on the score sheet yesterday, but he's been fantastic all season long. So when you have a game where Zachary Johnson doesn't get you any goals, he doesn't get on the score sheet at all, and you still win 8-1, that's a fantastic sign for this team.
I believe Johnson is Waynesburg points leader currently, as he had 7 points in a single game last week.
That'll help.
That set the Waynesburg University record for the men's side of things. Up next on Saturday, they play La Roche. Will the stars continue to shine, or will it be the depth guys that remain to get opportunities?
Well,
what's going to be the story?
Like I said, it's always a better sign if you see the depth guys really making that impact, because if you have the stars being kept off the score sheet, you're going to have to rely on those depth guys as you head deeper into conference play. And I talked about it last week with Logan. A lot of close games in conference play last year that ended in losses. So if you can have those depth guys make a push, potentially flip a couple of those games, you're talking about a top 3 seed in the PAC tournament.
I know we're kind of go full circle here with this question, but they did start 0-2, 4-game win streak. What has been the biggest key to that bounce back?
Well, the biggest key to that bounce back has been those contributions from literally everywhere on the pitch. I think you didn't have starters like Sam Norris and Taylor McFarland play yesterday. I'm sure that was completely on purpose. Starting some of those depth pieces who played well. I mean, I didn't see a big difference in play between maybe some of those backups and the starters that are normally in there. So just getting those contributions from everywhere, that's going to be their biggest key all season long.
Well, thank you, Anthony. That's all the time we have on week 2 of Jacket Sports Weekly, everything Waynesburg sports. From Mia Henkins and Tyler Aaron, our producers in the back, to me on stage, Dean Shazer, Anthony DeFilippo, Brett Gombita, Ethan Spozarski, Benicio DeFalco. I think I covered them all. Our camera crew and our audio crew. This was week 2 of Jacket Sports Weekly. Stay tuned for week 3 on YouTube.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.